Oh, good evening and welcome everybody. This is the Doug and Fur Show. We are excited for another show. We are live right now. Please call in. The numbers on the bottom of the screen. We would love to hear from you if you want to call in. We'd love to talk to you. But today, right now, I am Doug Petrozelli. This is my partner in truth,
Fernando.
And we have a special guest here today. We're going to let you introduce yourself.
Hey, how's it going, everyone? I am Kevin. I'm a longtime friend of Fernando. I've known him for the last 10 years and just stopping by to visit, hang out, and have a chit-chat for a little bit.
Longer than that, right? Like 12 or 13 years, something crazy like that. Right?
Yeah, I know.
Yeah, it's been a while since we saw each other, but I think randomly, just out of the blue, you hit me up, and then I was like, dude, what would you like to be on the show? And then
Let's do it. Let's have a conversation.
Yeah, so one of the things was that you just recently got back from Seattle, and I would imagine that's a little bit different than being in Florida. So
Yes.
what would one of the things I think that we're going to talk about is maybe some things me and Fernando have discussed, in a more formal way before, but we are here, but we have what we see on the news as far as restrictions and lockdowns and things that we may disagree with or things that we agree with, but we have somebody that actually just came back from Seattle, so we're going to be touching on that from a perspective of somebody who is actually there, what he sees, what he thinks, what his thoughts were. So what do you think about Seattle as compared to, I guess you live here in Florida?
Yeah, in Miami.
Okay.
I would say Seattle itself is an absolutely beautiful city. At least my first impression when I arrived, it felt like it was like the New York of the Pacific Northwest.
Okay.
But obviously, as soon as I got to downtown, the line of tents, the homeless tents,
Okay.
in Downtown Avenue, like
Oh,
really,
you had some pictures actually, right?
I did actually. It like put me off basically. But that wasn't necessarily the highlight of the trip.
Right.
You know, I did have a lot of. I ate at a lot of good restaurants. I had a lot of fun experiences, but it definitely is like night and day compared to like here in Miami. Basically, we obviously have way more freedom here, way more liberties.
Right.
Which is kind of ironic because you would think that the leftist or liberal view is that you want people to be
Free.
well, the word liberal means like you're
liberation,
freedom,
Right.
basically. But it's not the case over there. It's quite authoritarian and yeah.
Right. At what point do you let somebody have so much freedom? Because I mean, one of the ideas that I basically look at freedom is, I have the freedom to do whatever I want until I start to encroach on your freedom. So I can swing my fist around all day long, but the second it hits you in the nose, I am not allowed to do that because that affects your freedom. I am allowed to take things that are mine or things that are nobody's, but I can't take your stuff.
Correct.
So at what point do you allow so much freedom that it's complete anarchy? What point do you say, hey, you're free to sleep on the sidewalk, you're an individual who does not pay taxes, and now you're taking away from the people who do pay taxes and allow, what are you paying taxes for in a high tax city such as Seattle? People that are paying taxes in that regards are paying taxes in a high tax city so that they can, live in a nice, clean city. Now they're in this whole place of all this freedom. Now, where do we come to the point where now you're taking away freedom from someone else to give them, a different person, more freedom?
Right. That's a good point. It's tough to think about what the line is because, at the same time, like, if you push the homeless away outside of downtown,
right,
you're not fixing the problem, you're just hiding it.
Right.
But at the same time, if you become overly lax with allowing them to basically set up encampments in the middle of the city,
right,
that creates an environment that's dangerous for others, like
right,
a high crime environment, basically.
Absolutely.
And what? Oh, were you gonna?
No, I pulled up your pictures.
Oh, I thought you were gonna say something.
No, continue.
No, I mean, and it kind of goes in with the argument that people will say, like in Seattle would make in terms of like coronavirus restrictions, where they're like, well, like you have the right to live your life or whatever, but not the right to spread disease to me.
Right.
But at the same time, that's the argument we're making with like, yo, get rid of this homeless stuff. That's
right.
You got like people doing meth in the middle of Fifth Avenue.
Right. And I don't want to walk around with my wife and kid and expose them to that.
I literally saw like 3 times, like in an alley, like people like smoking meth, like on the street basically, in broad daylight, and I'm like, yo, does nobody care about like? And
so I'm assuming
like,
that's a very decriminalized activity.
Right.
Because here you would go to jail for that.
Right. Well, I mean, I'm of the view that like I don't think someone who has a drug addiction shouldn't have their life ruined over. They actually need help.
Right.
But at the same time, they shouldn't be allowed to just like just smoke it out on the street like in front of everybody. Like you got like families, kids, and stuff like that,
Right.
and
Yeah.
like, you know, maybe they can act erratic when they're high or whatever. You know what I'm saying? So
Right.
Let me
yeah.
let me try something here. Can we still? Are we still good? Yeah, we're still good. So
The
okay, so you
audio's
can.
good.
Yeah, the audio's good. So yeah, so I just wanted to show. You sent me
Dude.
this picture. This is a bit of a graphic warning.
Yeah.
So open, you know, waste
Open defecation,
just
basically,
right there on the street.
next to the parking meter.
Trash.
That's
right
a
in front of the
Target right
store.
there. And
This
you
is
know-
a Target.
That's a Target,
Wow.
and that's
And a riot didn't just happen. That was just
That was just-
a
that was
regular
just there.
day.
literally right there, just in front of a Target.
And
basically.
what's this here?
I don't remember. I think that's like 3rd or 4th Avenue. Which
Are they camping out for a new Xbox?
They're waiting for that PS5. You know what I'm saying?
Okay, so this is the situation's obviously not good, and it's funny that you mentioned that stuff because when you mentioned that like liberal means freedom or whatever, and I think that used to be the original intention. But Doug, earlier when we were talking off camera, you made a great point that the mindset that they have, or the mindset that a lot of people have, is the person we're electing is an elected monarch. So yeah, we have the freedom to elect that person, but at the end of the day, we're in submission to them because they're our king, essentially, right?
Right.
Well, notice the political language that they use when they say our elected leaders, right?
Mm-hmm.
They're not our leaders. They're supposed to be our representatives.
Exactly.
So they're not supposed to lead us. They're supposed to basically, you know,
Represent our interests.
our interests, so to speak.
Yeah, and that's our viewpoint, right? And that's a very libertarian way to think. It's
Well, it's an American founding viewpoint.
exactly. It's
American
like
values are libertarian.
we have the right to choose what we want. We're smart. We're mature people,
Right.
and we're simply electing you to kind of not grant us our freedoms, protect our freedoms.
That we believe are God given to us already.
Exactly. Like, we have the right to life. No one can take that away. Those are inalienable rights. If somebody could take them away, it's like you were saying, then they're not really rights.
Right.
All right. So
Well, apparently under the these COVID policies, like our rights can be suspended during an emergency.
if
And as you know, like the government will start manufacturing more
Exactly.
emergencies to suspend.
if you get more power during an emergency, then it's only natural that you're going to seek more emergencies to maintain that power, and that's
Right.
literally what Hitler did, right?
Right, and he never gave up. I just wanted to bring that up. He took power under the idea of an emergency, and they operated under that emergency state until Germany was overtaken by the Allies. So literally years were operating under emergency situations. And we have to remember, that was a wealthy, educated, Western free democracy. That happened there. That can happen here. And I think that's what we always talk about. That's one of the ideas of the show. This is what we are doing.
That's why
to
we
give
do the
back
show.
and to push back against that, because
I agree.
the battle is not won, in a hand-to-hand combat. The battle is won in the ideas and the minds, and that's what we are trying to do here. I think we're doing well, actually.
Have you ever heard of that quote? There's nothing more permanent than a temporary government program. Basically.
Yes.
So basically, these temporary COVID measures, like
Right.
if you don't fight back, like will become permanent COVID measures.
Absolutely.
Get ready to show your vax card every time
Right,
you enter a
right.
restaurant. To wear masks forever.
Right.
But wasn't federal income tax supposed to be temporary?
Yeah, it was supposed to be temporary in 1913 for 3%, and
This is
our
crazy.
lowest income tax is 4 times higher than that
It's
today.
I did not know this, Doug. You told me about this last time, that income tax wasn't always a thing.
Yeah.
And I've always been, as long as I've been alive, I was like, no, I mean, the government needs to tax. Like, obviously they need money. And I've always been under that impression. And it wasn't until recently that I found out that wasn't always a thing. How was the U.S. government alive before income tax? And the more and more I thought about it, I'm like, how did people elect this? How difficult must it have been to have been alive during a period where you're like, I didn't pay taxes this year, everything I earned is mine, and the next year I'm giving up my money to the government. You must have been furious.
Right.
But it was very little. It was 3%. Oh,
Right.
what's 3%? We'll give 3% to the government. And now we're at
Supposed to be 10%.
Well,
temporary. I'm sorry.
yeah, temporary. And now we're at the point where we've lived with that all our lives. We don't know what another life without that is.
Right.
And that's how the government operates. That's what happens when you're not careful. They keep on taking more and more and more until now 25% is normal. I am losing $25,000 to the government every year.
Right.
And then they're not spending it any better than you would.
Exactly.
You know
Why
what I'm
would they
saying?
take my money to spend it in a way that like I know what to do with my money, you don't, and apparently you're not spending it very well. I'm okay with them having money to protect us with the military and things like that, but there's so much money that goes to waste.
Right, and I will say that one of the arguments, getting back to the homeless problem, is, oh well, because I've had conversation with very liberal-minded people, and they're like, oh well, the thing is we can't trust people with their own wealth, so we need to take it by force. My argument is that's immoral. If me and him vote to take your money and steal it from you, it didn't make it moral. So I don't care if the whole country votes to steal somebody's money, it didn't make it moral. So regardless if I think that you have the ability to do the right thing or not, even if you're going to do the wrong thing and spend it on hookers and booze, like, that's for you to do. I'm not doing a moral thing by stealing it from you and then giving it to the poor. Like, no, I stole it. And there's no other way around it. The other thing is, when we have to look at studies that show when the government has stepped in, charities have gone down. And when the government has stepped out, charity given has gone up. And that is a reality. We can look at the statements of that. And the point is that we do have to trust human nature. And when human beings have disposable income, they want something that gives our lives worth meaning and purpose. I'm not saying that's everybody. That is a general rule. And that is why we have to trust human beings, and we have to make policies based off human conditions, not off of me thinking my way is best. No, the power needs to be in the hands of the people. And we find that in a situation like, we're looking at the poverty and people living in tents. I just watched a really great documentary, Tent City, USA. It's on Amazon. I believe it was free. Anybody who is interested in that, I really encourage you to watch this. And it's giving these stats about how much money the federal government is like pouring in. And it is billions of dollars on an annual basis. And I'm just thinking to myself, how the hell are there people on the streets? We can't build buildings at the very least. I'm not even saying they would be great or that would be a great living condition, but it would be better than somebody living out on the street. A building that had climate control would be better than people living here baking in the in the sun or freezing to death in the northern areas. That would at least be better. With $8 billion, which is an annual budget, we could at least in a couple years build enough buildings to house.
And we'd probably do that if we had the money, but we're giving to the government.
Right.
Well, and think about it, like
government's misspending it. Go ahead.
No, well, like think of how much of that money goes to like administrative fees or basically gets lost in the mix of corruption. Basically,
right.
The U.S. government brings in what, like $2 trillion in revenue annually?
3.
Or is it 3 now?
$3 trillion in revenue a year, and then we borrow another $1 trillion.
So it's not a lack of money, clearly.
Right.
Right. It's not. It's like, where is that money being spent on?
Right.
You know what I'm saying?
Absolutely.
So, no, I was gonna say, well, whenever I hear politicians talk about a rate hike or whatever,
right?
If the money that we already have, which is absurdly, such a huge innumerable amount,
right,
can actually be spent on what it's supposed to be spent on,
right,
then maybe I would agree to it.
Right.
And I hate taxes, but it's not, they're just going to waste it more, and then, in a few years they're going to ask for another rate hike, and then it's like, at what point,
Right, absolutely. And what I saw at the end of this documentary, they showed some programs that were really working. And the wonderful thing that was just so encouraging to me, they were all private programs. Like, the government was not involved. And I was just like, oh my gosh, this is like, and I watched it thinking, I want to see the other side, and thinking there was going to be a very liberal perspective, and there was going to be, we just need to tax people more and give more. And I was like, well, if $8 billion a year isn't doing it, how are you going to justify that? But that being said, the best program that I saw, there was one for veterans, that was hard for me, because I'm like, man, at the very least we could take care of the people that made this the freest, most wealthiest, most prosperous country. And we have to allow a private company to do it. But the point was, the private company did it. And it's producing great results in these people's lives, that they are not just temporarily housed, they're moving from these, what they call tiny homes, to then, getting their own mortgages and getting their own careers and, getting on a path that we want to see. And the other one was a private institution in Hawaii. And just to give you an idea, Hawaii is the most expensive place to live in the entire United States. The average home is $800,000 in Hawaii.
This is more than California.
Yeah. No, California's cheap compared to Hawaii. A lot of people don't know that, but no, Hawaii is absolutely outrageous. And that's,
I think it has to do too with the fact that it's an island. Like
everything has to be imported, basically.
Yeah.
It's an island, and they have a lot of regulations for what you can build. They want to preserve a lot of things, so that does jack the price up.
Basically, because you can't.
you're not allowed to build. So anyway, this program goes on, and they create this. It's like a little, basically a gated community of tiny homes, 2-bedroom homes.
Mm-hmm.
But they put in, demands on individuals that you have to pay rent, you have to work, and that rent that you're paying, which is $1,000 a month, which I don't think is too much to ask, and you could live there if you're a single mother. There's a 2-bedroom for you and your child to have, and it's nothing, over the top. But a private company did that, and it was 100% sustained by donations. And the point was that is the way we need to do it, and I actually believe there's so much evidence. When we look at Donald Trump doing the tax cuts, and people can, if you want to like him or love him, you can't deny the realities of some of the policies he did. When he did the tax cuts on corporations, one, everyone's raises went up. Two, corporations actually started to give bonuses because corporations need to invest in their employees. There's a self-interest in investing in your employee for you to move ahead. Individual giving went up when people had more disposable income. And the point is that as a federal broad program, when you make a program to help the poor, one, it's very hard to be personal with the individual because there are people that need a hand up and there are people that need a kick in the ass, and that's just an absolute reality. I can't do that from Washington, D.C. with somebody in California, but I can do that with somebody in my backyard.
Yep.
And that's the point of when we saw the real progresses that we saw, that I got to see made in this documentary, was the private institution. And I think a great way for more funding for that to happen would be cut taxes. Because I'll donate more than I donate now.
Yeah, of course.
More disposable
You
income.
have more
Absolutely.
to spend. Yeah.
You'll spend more too.
I'll
The
spend
money
more
will- the money
More
will
to
go
the
around
economy,
more.
and create more jobs.
I'll invest more.
Yeah.
I have more money to do things as opposed to giving it to a government. I mean, a perfect example of how private businesses are just better than the government is just NASA. It's been in the same place since the 60s.
Right.
And then you got
And-
SpaceX in the last 10 years,
Yeah.
basically already
Already.
creating reusable rockets.
Exactly.
Right.
Well, people don't understand how to quantify the value that private markets bring to the world, basically, right? Like they want to look at someone like Jeff Bezos and think, oh, this guy's so evil because he's so rich, and look at how homeless are suffering or whatever. But Jeff Bezos, yes, he's a multi-billionaire, but he has, just like Bill Gates, has enriched the lives of millions of people by creating
Jobs.
creating thousands of jobs, enriching millions of people through the stock market. Because I have my 401k and stuff like that that's gone up in value when Amazon stock has gone up.
Right.
Amazon Prime. When has the government created a service where you can order something and receive it in your house in 2 days? Or you have Microsoft, right?
Yeah.
The operating system that you're using right now that makes your life convenient, that you can, your
It's
product
not developed by the government.
your productivity has gone up. These things add value to our lives, and I think therefore people like Bill Gates should be compensated accordingly. It's their business; they've given us value.
Exactly. And once you start demanding that they give their money to the poor, then they have no incentive to continue to make those innovations.
Right.
If you take away their money, and it's like, why am I going to create corporations? Why am I going to work? Why is anybody going to invent anything new if the money that you're expecting to get is going to be taken from you to give it to someone else? And why is anyone going to be encouraged to do anything if they're just going to get money? I'm not gonna do
on
anything.
principle, why is it their responsibility anyways? Because they have more. Relatively speaking, a middle class person has more than someone in Africa. Should you open your doors and just take someone into your house just because you have more than them?
Should you be forced to?
Should you be forced to?
Exactly.
Right. So it's no. Why is it their responsibility that they should have their money, hard earned money, mind you, taken away from them?
Right.
So that the government can just squander it away, and the problem is still not fixed. I actually when I came back from Seattle, I'm the type of person I like to Wikipedia and just learn stuff or whatever.
Yeah.
And I looked up, why the problem in Seattle has gone on this long. Why is it a thing there?
Right.
And I think Seattle receives $250 million a year from the federal government to go towards homelessness, and it's 2022, and
we just saw the pictures.
so
that
you're
we
telling me
posted.
with $250 million, where is that money
A
going?
year.
You could have built a small city for them to
Yeah.
house
You could have
themselves in.
manufactured homes that you cannot solve
Right.
this problem.
Right.
And plus, this is a problem that you can't just throw money at it either, because
Right.
I read somewhere that 95 or something % of homelessness is a result of either drug addiction or mental illness.
Right.
And that's something that you can put a homeless person in a house,
Right.
but it's
the mentality.
It's the mentality, like,
Right.
or the drug addiction, like
Right.
that needs to be addressed first.
Right, absolutely.
Before just sticking them in a house, because
Right.
that's not the issue.
Right. There's an issue with, we have a human condition. We don't have a poverty condition
Right.
as much as it is a human condition. We can look at much poorer countries across this globe that operate better than some of our major cities. Because they understand certain values. They understand the sense of there's a responsibility for them to take care of their neighbor and not the government to do it for them.
Right.
And that's just an overall quality of life that we do better off in that way. The human being, by nature, and I think that we can quantify it, does better under freedom. Go ahead.
No, that for a while, like I'm gonna say a counterpoint here that I talked to my dad about that I thought was excellent, and it's not quite the counterpoint, like completely on the other side, but I was under this thought for a while, right, where I was like, you know what? Why should the government care about anybody? Everyone's well-being should be their own to take care of, right? So like, if that person is homeless, the government shouldn't care. That person is homeless, and it's the people should care. Like, hey, I'll help you out,
Right.
but the government has no role in that. That's how I thought for a while, right? But my dad made a good point. He said, if the government thinks like that, then there's a high chance that the country as a whole will not be as successful, because the country succeeds when people succeed.
Right.
And some people need help, and if no one helps them, then people's lives aren't enriched. Right. So yes, it's true that some people are going to do well, and some people are going to do bad. But it's good to have some programs, not huge programs, but some programs to kind of provide help for people to get on their feet.
Right.
Because then that gives them the opportunity to contribute to society.
Right.
Because people that aren't contributing to society, at the end, they're pulling away from society.
Right.
Right.
So I thought that was a good point.
Right.
I think welfare programs are good, but they're just in theory, and they're just taking advantage
Right.
of. So
Well, they're a lot bigger than they need to be.
exactly.
We would like to have lower taxes, like to see people contribute more, have smaller programs for the people that would fall between.
And if you're helping
the
someone
cracks.
for 10 years and they're still not on their
Right,
feet,
right.
Well, the thing is, the issue is, I don't think any of us here are against welfare programs and helping others. It's just that when the government is the one that administrates that, they do a poor job at it. You know, when people talk about, well, we should have free healthcare, or free this or free that, it's like, have you ever stepped inside of a DMV or the USPS and like it's the worst service you've ever had in your life?
Right.
Do you want your homeless program to be like that? Do you want your healthcare to be like the DMV?
Right.
Because I sure as hell don't.
exactly.
Right.
Yeah, I think it's a good way to think of it is like this: when you're getting paid regardless, you don't have no incentive to do a good job. That's why you get good service in small businesses and poor service in large corporations typically.
Well, to add to your point, pretty much think of how business and a government runs, right? A business is forced to balance a budget. If a business doesn't balance their budget, they will literally cease to exist.
Right.
So in order to balance their budget, they have an incentive to be the best that they can be because they're competing against other entities that also have to balance their budgets. Governments, on the other hand, don't.
Exactly.
Basically, if they don't balance their budgets or they run out of money, they'll just steal some more, basically, or they'll just borrow some more, and it
Right.
just like basically they have no incentive to improve because
Exactly.
there is no risk, there is no
Right.
their bottom
There's
line.
no competition.
Right.
Yeah.
There's a competing factor. The USPS got a little bit better when Amazon and FedEx joined the game.
Exactly.
I would say that the Federal Reserve has stepped its game up a little bit right now because of cryptocurrencies.
Mhm.
Just in the idea that they're going to raise interest rates, which I understand is a painful thing for people financially. That's going to hit everybody hard. But it's the fact that that is how you balance inflation. That's how you get rid of inflation, is by raising interest rates. It takes more money out of the system because interest is just meaning there's more dollars than what we have as a nation is worth.
No, and
Go ahead.
yeah, go ahead.
Well, I was gonna say they've actually backed themselves into a corner with all this money printing and low interest rates to begin with, because remember, we're borrowing money from ourselves.
Right.
So in raising the interest rates, this is interest that we're going to have to pay back to the Treasury.
Right.
Which is why they've been apprehensive about doing this to begin with, because now the debt is so great
Right.
that imagine 5% on all the trillions
Right.
that we've just printed now, basically.
Right. At what point are we going to be servicing our debt and just basically paying interest?
Exactly.
Right. Just trying not to let it grow anymore.
And if you guys have anything to add to the conversation, feel free to call in and share your thoughts with us. We're going to be live here for a little while longer, so
Right.
just feel free to chime in. This is kind of just open discussion right now.
Right.
We're talking about policies in general.
Right.
I don't think we've touched too much on COVID policies, but while you were in Seattle, what kind of COVID policies did you see that were different than what's here that just really made your life hard?
Well, I mean, to start, you have to show your vax card to just be in any indoor establishment. To live, basically. And, you know, I am vaccinated myself, so I have it with me, but I just find it irritating that, like, you know, to go walk around with a souvenir or whatever, to buy a souvenir, you have to, like, present your card. I even went to a place, like, I walked into a restaurant just to take a look, just because I wasn't going to eat there, but I just liked how it looked.
Right.
And, like, on the way out, well, the lady was like, "Oh, I need to see your vax card." And I was like, no, I was just looking, like, I'm vaccinated. And she wouldn't let me leave.
You're on your way out.
I was on my way out. I was just like, I'm a tourist. I'm just taking a look. She's like, no, you have to show me. I'm like, I'm leaving, you know? And I showed it to her, but I was like, what the, like,
wow.
B word? Like, you know what I'm saying? Like,
Yeah. No, I think, like, even if I was vaccinated, I wouldn't show it out of principle, just because I think it's like, that's my business and you have no
yeah,
right.
like,
You know.
and the thing is, too, it's like, you also, like, they're really, I guess, like, anal about wearing your masks everywhere.
Right.
And to me, like, for people that like to say, well, follow the science and this and that, it's like, what's the limiting principle? Where if you have, like, 70% of your population vaccinated, and some boosted, too, on top of that.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, and mind you, like, I caught COVID over the holidays, so I'm vaccinated and I recovered from COVID. So, you know, like,
You have natural immunity.
on top of that.
Right.
And I'm still forced to wear my mask everywhere. So it's like, at what point, like, do you want to wear a mask forever? Like, when does it end?
Because the thing is that, like, there's science, but then there's the implementation of the science.
Right.
Scientifically speaking, yes, you can have a science statistic, like, it's like, you can't refute that. It's numbers.
Right.
Right? But you can't implement it in the way that you think. Yes, if everyone wore their mask perfectly, N95s, and they covered, and there was absolutely zero CO, and they changed your mask consistently, if everything was followed like that perfectly all the time, then yes, it would work.
Right.
But it's not. You can't. It's not something that you can just implement the science in the way that people
Right.
think.
Right.
Right. So I don't know if you guys have noticed, but I think I made one post on the Doug First Show story, and I'm gonna start doing it some more, as well as Doug. When we find just, like, stupid political things, inconsistencies, we're just gonna post it, make a meme about it, just to make it funny. One that I posted recently, a couple of days ago, was the fact there was this weapon-free zone
Right.
at RDV. I went to RDV's Sportsplex in Orlando, and it said weapon-free zone, and then you just walk right in. There's no metal detectors, no security, no nothing.
Right.
Weapons-free zone.
Yeah, so I just put, like, the
Like,
meme had, like, it said like the stonks guy, and it said security spelled with a K. so it's like,
So,
it's
like,
like,
the shooter or, like, the ISIS guy's gonna be like,
oh shoot, weapon-free zone. It's
Right,
like,
right.
damn it, like, they have gun regulations here, like, can't shoot this place up now.
so
Right.
we're just gonna do things like that, like, and talking about COVID policy. So we went to Orlando and in City Walk, and I'm specifically gonna mention the names of these places to call them out, just so people can see how stupid they are. It's like, okay, you have to wear masks everywhere that you're indoors, right? And then you look outside, and it is packed. People are shoulder to shoulder, no mask, and you don't have to wear masks to be
Right.
outside. Shoulder to shoulder, no mask. You're, like, this close to the person in front of you.
Right.
And then you go inside, and people are sitting at their tables. They're far away,
Right.
and there you have to wear a mask. Fortunately, the employees are smart enough to not enforce that. They didn't care.
Right.
But policy said that. So it's like, I just want it to make sense.
Right.
Make it make sense.
Make it make sense. Just be consistent.
Dude,
right?
my favorite, you can't forget the classic. You go into a restaurant, and this happened to me a lot while I was there. Like, I would be waiting in, like, the lobby, like, because, you know, I have my reservation at a certain time. And, like, you know, my mask was, like, down by a little bit, or I pulled it off to, like, scratch my nose. They'd be like, excuse me, sir, lift up your mask or whatever. Like,
Right.
they were super, like, vigilant about that.
Right.
But then the moment I got to my table to eat, I could take my mask off. And it's like, so you're telling me with this Omicron variant that has an R value of, like, 8 or 9, it's almost as contagious as the measles. And you know, like, the measles is so contagious that they say that if somebody with measles was in a room for just a few minutes, like, that room will still be contagious for about, like, 4 hours afterwards.
Mm.
So, like, somebody could walk in, like, 4
Right.
hours later, just breathing the same air, and it's that contagious.
Right.
And you're telling me that, like, I have to, like, force wear my mask in the lobby, but if I take it off while I'm eating, COVID just stops, basically.
Right.
That's all I'm saying. Make it make sense.
Or curfews, right? Like,
Right.
what is a curfew going to do? You got people, like, socializing in restaurants, drinking in bars, like,
Right.
spreading the COVID or whatever, but at 9 p.m., like, okay, like that's when COVID comes out. Like, come on,
Right.
like it makes no sense to me, honestly.
We're just gonna call out, and we're gonna call out the places too,
No,
because
no,
I
I'm okay
want
with
them to
that.
be on blast.
No, I want to, one of the things that I love about building this platform, and I'm thankful for everybody that has joined and continues to follow us. We've gotten hundreds of views on the last 6 videos. We've gotten between 400 and 600 views on every video.
Yeah,
so
it's very good.
Thank you for that, and we believe there's power in that. And one of the things is I wanna call up the companies that are doing things that are saying, hey, we're not going. We're gonna allow you to be in freedom. If you want to wear a mask, you can. If you don't want to wear a mask, that's okay too. Companies that believe in those values, and I think that that's also part of the push, because we have to go after the culture. We're not just going after policy, we go after the culture. And if we go after the culture, we will vote the right policy.
You know what? And I would even respect a company that is extremely anal about masks. You can't take it off at all.
Right.
I wouldn't agree with it, but I would respect it.
I just wouldn't
because it makes sense.
It makes sense.
It makes
Right.
sense. Exactly. Like
Dude, I mean, like you've seen like doctors in hospitals treating COVID. They're wearing literal astronaut suits, and you're telling me your Walmart Hello Kitty mask is, and like on the package it says like this is not for medical use.
Yeah.
But like if you have it on, like we're all doing security theater here, like we're all pretending as if that's actually gonna do anything.
Yeah.
Right.
So, like at the airport, I went to Portugal recently, and you're at the airport, right? Social distancing, mask on at all times, and then you're sitting like closer than we are next to a stranger, and yeah, you have to have your mask on. But when they bring out the food, now you take it off. You're eating next to a stranger, like this close.
Yeah.
No
Right.
mask, obviously, while you're eating. I know that the amount of exposure is different, right? So, like, okay, yes, you have your mask off, but it's for less time than if you didn't have it on at all. It's a 9-hour flight. What does it matter?
Right.
Yeah.
I mean, and then if we look at a lot of the studies that I've seen here, the cloth mask really does a 12% decrease. And we have to do risk assessments of people. And yes, we could go to this extreme. 12% is better than no percent. Yes, I understand that, but I could never drive a car again and really, really increase my chances of never getting a car accident and dying. When I have right now, basically, in the United States, if you are somebody who drives a car, I forget what the average miles a day are, but if you're somebody who drives a car, you have a 1% chance of dying in a car accident.
No, I think that's high.
No, it is. We look it up. I've very much looked into it.
You have a 1% chance of that. There would be so many millions of deaths. Like,
No.
Well, I
no,
remember
when you
reading
break it down to people who drive every day, which is not everybody, and you break it down,
they have to
by
be
and
above
by.
a certain mile.
there's like
Right,
150,000 a year, like
it's
automotive deaths, like
Right, I believe
150,000.
it is our 4th cause of death in the United States is car accidents.
Yeah. No, but 150,000 is definitely a lot less than 1%.
No.
But you mean above a certain number of
But
miles?
It's
from
not-
the driving
it's not-
population.
Right. It's not of our entire. It's not 1% of our population. I'm saying that if you get in a car on a regular basis and drive
Over a certain number of miles.
number of miles,
Okay.
you have a 1% chance of dying. I could dramatically decrease my chances by that, but is it worth it to me? Let me tell you, the mask is not worth it to me for 12%. It's just not.
Especially with how like mild Omicron is, right?
Right.
So,
I mean, dude, like we all want to get back to normal life, and if there's no limiting principle, it's like at what point, and people I feel are not good at critical thinking and risk assessment, and
yeah, it's all fear and panic.
it's all fear and panic.
Right.
Like I'm vaccinated and I still caught COVID.
And
what
you're
I'm saying?
fine.
And I'm
Right.
fine.
Yeah, so I know that's not the case, and we're not minimizing from anyone that hasn't been the case, right? If you've lost a loved one, we're not minimizing from that. We're just saying, make your own decisions and don't let other people make the decision for you,
Right.
right? So if the government is the one pushing the policies, then we'll push back against the government. But the government has lifted these, right? The Supreme Court recently lifted Biden's vaccine mandate for companies,
Right.
And-
except for in the healthcare industry,
which a judge blocked it recently, I believe.
That makes
would be on
sense.
you to
I don't
talk
necessarily
about. I didn't know that.
I don't necessarily agree with that, but that makes more sense than a broad brush forcing.
Exactly. Anyone with more than 100. So if you have less than 100 employees, you're COVID free.
Well,
Right.
look at like the news and the media, like manufacturing this constant fear, right?
Mm.
Like you have a lot of people say, well, we need these restrictions because 800,000 Americans die or whatever. Or my favorite is that they like to do the it's not a false comparison, but like when they say, well, a 9/11 is happening every 2 days, right? You don't think of that in those terms, when it comes to like flu deaths or heart attacks or whatever, right?
Right.
Yeah,
400
gun violence or whatever.
400
Car accidents.
400,000 Americans die a year from heart disease, right?
Right.
And if you break that down per day, I don't know what that comes out to per day, 400 a day, 5, I don't know, right?
Yeah, it's a lot.
But,
Yeah,
you know,
but-
it's a 9/11 every few days, but
Right.
nobody says that about heart disease.
Right.
And, like, you're not, you know, outraged or, like, all those deaths are constantly happening, and, like, nobody thinks
Right.
twice about that.
Yeah, it could go away if you ban McDonald's.
Or at this very second, I don't know what the statistics are. Like every few seconds, somebody's dying somewhere in the U.S.
Right.
Right now, someone's getting stabbed. Someone's dying of heart attacks. Someone
Yeah.
like every second. Right.
7,500 people die a day in this country, and that's just the reality.
And that's just the reality.
330 million people, 7,500 people are dying every day.
And nobody cares about that. But yet, when it comes to the COVID deaths, they want to throw those numbers as justification for let's shut businesses down. You know, you got kids, which are the lowest risk. Let's double mask them, type of stuff.
That gives the media views. Views gives them money, and if that's what gives the media views, and they spread panic, and that's what people. That's all they see, and that's why it's important to stay educated and continue to look at many different sources and just think for yourselves, not just what the media tells you. And the reason we're calling out these companies and these places is because if the government is no longer imposing these things on you, right? So like the government is not imposing a mask mandate, the government is not imposing a vaccination mandate, and you choose to have it and have it not make sense, we're going to call you out on it.
Right.
So
It's no excuse.
Carhartt,
Right.
you know, the government said you don't have to do this anymore, right?
Right.
You don't have to force your employees to be vaccinated. You have the right as a company to do what you want, and if you're going to make that stupid choice, we're going to call you out on it.
Right, and I will refuse to buy anything from Carhartt unless they decide to start treating their employees like they do in the United States and they have the freedom to make their own medical decisions.
Right? Like, yeah, they're granting religious exemptions and things like that, but they're still biased. Like, they're still like, I mean, sure, they can be like, oh yeah, you have a religious exemption, we'll grant it to you, and then they'll lay you off for some other reason. You know what? We're going to lay you off. You're not doing a good job, et cetera, et cetera. And you're going to take them to court and you're going to prove it. You're going to prove them wrong. Most people are just going to suck it up and take the loss.
Right.
So,
well, I mean, I ultimately believe that, you know, in a situation like Carhartt, where that is somebody that's, you know, providing a good service for, you know, the public here, I believe the power's on us. Because if we decide not to buy from them, they will change really quick. It would be really easy for me to say, oh, you know, the employees need to push back. Well, what is the employee going to do? They're going to quit their job. You know, there's a huge cost to that. And I would really sympathize with somebody that has, you know, a family to feed, a roof to keep over their head, that they're not ready to just quit their job.
yeah.
And I don't necessarily want to put that pressure on them. They can put that pressure on me. I can go buy the things that I want to get from Carhartt from another company because that's available to me.
Mhm.
You know, this show that, you know, we have the opportunity to do, we can talk about this and encourage other people not to buy from a place like that. And it's really at no cost to us.
Yeah.
So I look at it, there's a responsibility when we see something wrong happening. Like, you know, we as Americans have a right and a responsibility to do something about it. And it doesn't have to be from a perspective of electing an official. We are doing that right now. Other people are doing that right now. And I think that's important for us.
Yeah.
But people have forgotten, you know, the spirit of like independence and self-reliance.
Right.
So basically, when you know, think about, okay, there's just a sidetrack for a little bit, right? Think of how the government is pushing for lower educational standards, for people being less reliant on themselves, right? When people are dumber, they're less self-reliant, right?
Right.
They're more likely to delegate that control to the government, basically.
Right.
Rather than you having, you know, autonomy over yourself, your life, being a responsible individual, you're like,
Right.
I can't do this for myself, so I'm going to have the government do it for me,
Right.
basically. And that's what's happening
Right.
with society.
And I think that comes down to the point that human nature, we don't desire to be free. We don't have an inclination toward liberty. We have an inclination toward security. We have an inclination to be taken care of.
It's very dangerous.
And the point is that freedom is not, you know, Ronald Reagan said this, it wasn't something that was just passed down in the bloodstream. It has to be taught. It has to be shown how valuable and precious it is. And it has to be shown how to maintain that from generation to generation, because it is one generation from being lost. These are the things, I'm paraphrasing a quote from Ronald Reagan. I do truly believe that. If we get rid of those values of passing freedom down, us as society are going to be inclined toward security. We're going to be inclined toward being taken care of the government. And, it would just be wonderful if this all-powerful government would take care of us. And I believe we have that inclination because I, for one, believe we are spiritual beings that do desire to be taken care of a God, being taken care of by a God that loves and cares for us. But that being said, the God that I know also requires, of me to do things. And so I do believe that everything I have comes from God, but I believe that there's a responsibility for me to do with what I've been given. Typically, when human beings give or try to take the place of God, they do a very, very, very poor job. And I think that's exactly what we see when we see that happening with the government. And I think there's a huge correlation, biblically as there are politically, and I think that that's important.
Yeah. So it's good. Don't know what to say there, but going back to the other thing, would the RDV in Orlando please take down your gun-free zone sign, or put security at every corner and make sure no one can get in there with weapons.
Absolutely.
Either one or the other. If you're a restaurant and you still have mask mandates, either take out the mask mandates or force people to eat with masks on if you can do that.
Yeah.
Just be consistent, and we're going to call you out on it.
Absolutely. And good luck running your business that way. I really do. I really wish you all the luck in the world. I will be patroning someplace different. And I'll be encouraging people on this show and continue to try to grow this audience to do that as well. So, is that about it? Does anybody have any closing thoughts, arguments, complaints?
I don't know if you got everything off your chest.
I got a lot of it out of my chest.
Is there anything else you wanted to talk about?
No, I think that's good for tonight. I would stay longer, but it is a weekday. And as you know, I'm 30 now, so the adult life
hits different, huh?
Adult life hits different.
Yes, sir. So, we thank everybody who has been watching, people who watch us live. Please like and share. Follow us on our various other platforms. We definitely appreciate. Thank you, everybody who has continued to follow and subscribe. Please let your friends know. But we'll be signing off right now. This is the Doug and Fur Show.
Signing off.